A woman used whitening toothpaste daily, and her kidneys paid for it. Before we get into how that happens, if you find real medical cases like this one worth understanding, subscribe. We break down extreme, true diagnoses the way a hospital team would, one careful step at a time. A 41-year-old female, we'll call her RM, presented with three things: deep bone pain in her hips and spine, stiff, aching joints that no longer bent freely, and a strange, heavy fatigue that sleep never fixed. Picture her for a moment: shoulder length light brown hair, warm hazel eyes, a friendly, approachable face with subtle laugh lines around the eyes, average build, a plain, neutral tone, everyday top. She looked like anyone you might pass on the street. She did not look like someone whose skeleton was quietly turning against her. The bone pain came first, not the sharp pain of a break. Something deeper. A dull, grinding ache that lived in the core of her hips and ran up the length of her spine. When she tried to bend a knee, it resisted, like the joint had forgotten how to move. Doctors have a word for what her bones were doing: osteosclerosis. Break it apart and it tells you the whole story. Osteo meaning bone, sclerosis meaning hardening, bone hardening. Now, hardening might sound like a good thing. Stronger bones, right? Here is the twist. Her bones were not thinning the way you might expect with age. They were doing the opposite. They were getting denser, thicker. And with that density came a cruel trade. They were also becoming brittle. Wrong. Think of healthy bone as spongy on the inside, a little flexible, able to absorb a shock. Hers was turning chalky and solid, like the difference between a fresh branch that bends and an old dry stick that snaps. Dense, hard, fragile. But the deeper story wasn't in her skeleton at all. It was in her blood. In the emergency department, they ran a full panel, and one number climbed higher than it should: her creatinine. Creatinine is a waste product your kidneys are supposed to clear. When it rises, it means the kidneys are falling behind. Hers were filtering less than half of what they should have been, half. So now the picture had two halves that did not belong together: bones getting harder, kidneys getting weaker, and nobody in that room could yet say why one had anything to do with the other. If you have ever swallowed a little toothpaste and thought nothing of it, keep watching. This is why it matters. Then it got worse. Fast. Her legs began to feel numb. That deep ache in her back sharpened into something else, and then her spine locked. She could not straighten. The team sent her for imaging, and the scan came back with a finding that made the situation suddenly, coldly real. There was abnormal calcification bridging her vertebrae. New, hard mineral was building where soft ligament should have been, fusing the bones of her spine together. The tissue that was supposed to bend and flex was turning to stone. Stone. That is not a figure of speech here. Her body was laying down mineral in places it never belonged, welding her backbone into a single rigid column, one bridge at a time. And this had not happened overnight. You do not turn ligament to stone in a week. Whatever this was, it had been building inside her for years. Slowly, silently, a little more every single day, the team stabilized her, corrected her electrolytes, and for 2 days she walked short hallways and joked with the nurses, seeming to recover. A fragile improvement no one yet trusted, because nothing had explained what was building inside her. For 2 days, the fragile improvement held. RM walked the short hallways, joked with the nurses, seemed to be climbing back. Then her kidney function dropped again, and the bone pain returned worse than before. The false hope was over, and the doctors still had no cause. To understand what was happening, they had to rule things out, one by one. Good diagnosis is not magic, it is elimination, and doctors have a simple tool for it: a heuristic built on time. How fast did the problem arrive? Because the speed of onset points to the kind of enemy you are dealing with. Seconds to minutes, something sudden that is vascular, a clot, a bleed, a pipe bursting, or a pipe blocked. Weeks, a slow build with fever behind it that is infection or inflammation, the body at war with something. and years, a decline that crawls, that points somewhere else entirely, toward accumulation or toward a slow cancer. Take a second and guess. Fast onset, slow onset, which one fits a decline that took years? Because that single question does most of the work. So the team started at the top, vascular. Was this a clot or a bleed choking off the kidneys, starving the bone? It fit the sudden numbness in her legs, that locked up back. But vascular events announced themselves in seconds. Her story was measured in years: hip pain that grew slowly, joints that stiffened month by month, bones that had been quietly changing long before she ever reached the emergency department. A clot does not take years. Dismissed. Next, infection, inflammation, something eating at her from the inside, weeks of damage adding up. It is a fair thought when kidneys fail. But infection leaves fingerprints, a fever, a white count that climbs as the immune system floods the blood with soldiers. RM had neither. Her temperature was normal. Her white count sat exactly where it should. No war was being fought inside her. Dismissed. Yeah, that left the slow lane. Years of dense, hardening bone paired with failing kidneys. And one diagnosis leans forward here, waving its hand. Myeloma, a cancer of the plasma cells, the antibody factories in bone marrow. It can eat into bone, it can poison kidneys, and it does its work over years, exactly on this timescale. So they looked, and they ran protein studies, the electrophoresis that hunts for the abnormal proteins myeloma pumps into the blood. If it were myeloma, the result would scream. The result was clean. No rogue proteins, no spike, nothing. Dismissed. 3 candidates, 3 crossed off the board. And notice what is happening. Every dismissal is not a dead end. It is a narrowing. The clot is gone. The infection is gone. The cancer is gone. What remains is a shape without a name yet. Something slow, something that does not attack, does not infect, does not divide, something that simply builds. Accumulation. Something entering her body a little at a time, day after day, year after year, until her bones went dense and her kidneys started to quit. But accumulation of what? The doctors needed a source, something ordinary, something so woven into her routine that she would never think to mention it. So they asked about her day, what she ate, what she drank, what she touched. And almost as an aside, she mentioned her teeth. She brushed obsessively, morning, night, sometimes a third time, before a date or a meeting because she wanted her smile perfect. A high-fluoride whitening toothpaste, the strong kind. And here is the detail no one had asked for, the detail that changed everything. She often did not spit it all out. If you brush more than twice a day, this next detail is for you, because the clue was hiding in a tube she used 3 times a day and often swallowed instead of spitting. Fluoride. To understand how something added to drinking water to save children's teeth could turn a woman's bones to stone, we have to go back to a public health triumph in 1945 and its dark twin. Fluoride. The clue was hiding in a tube she used 3 times a day and often swallowed. And to understand how something added to drinking water to save children's teeth could turn her bones to stone, we go back to 1945, to Grand Rapids, Michigan, the first city to fluoridate its public water, and a genuine public health triumph. Because that triumph had a dark twin. In Grand Rapids, cavities in children dropped dramatically. It was one of the great quiet victories of the last century. Fluoride in the right amount strengthens teeth. But researchers already knew what happened when there was too much of it for too long. They knew it from whole villages in India and China, where the groundwater itself carried naturally high levels of fluoride. There, people were not adding it to anything. They were simply drinking their well water year after year. And across those villages, doctors saw the same picture over and over. Stiff spines, aching bones, bodies slowly turning rigid. The condition had a name, fluorosis, from fluoride, and the suffix meaning a condition caused by it. Quite literally, a condition caused by fluoride. Check your own toothpaste tube after this. You'll see the fluoride amount printed right on it, a small number meant to be spat out. RM was swallowing that number 3 times a day for years. So here is what fluoride actually does inside the body. Think of it as a molecular imposter. Your bone is built from crystals of a mineral called hydroxyapatite. And in each crystal sits a hydroxyl group, a small piece of chemistry that gives bone its structure. Fluoride slips in and takes its place. What forms instead is called fluoropatite. Harder than normal bone, but also denser and more brittle. Imagine patching drywall with concrete over and over until the wall can no longer flex. That is what was happening across her hips, her spine, her ligaments. Bone was turning to stone, and her kidneys. This is the cruel part. The kidneys are the body's only real exit for fluoride. Every day they filter it out and send it away. For most of us, that works fine. But when the intake stays high, year after year, the kidneys start to behave like an overwhelmed drainage pump during a flood, water rising faster than it can be pushed out. And the very ion they are trying to remove begins to damage the tubule cells, the tiny filtering units doing the work. So filtration falls, fluoride rises, and with less exit and more input, the cycle tightens on itself. The more damage, the less she could clear. The less she could clear, the more damage. Back in the hospital, RM's condition finally had an explanation that fit everything. The dense, brittle bones, the failing kidneys, the years-long build, the false hope, and the relapse. All of it. Her diagnosis was confirmed: chronic fluoride toxicity causing skeletal fluorosis and renal impairment, driven by years of swallowing high-fluoride whitening toothpaste. The treatment was blunt, but it was effective. Stop all fluoride exposure entirely. Support the kidneys, and manage the pain while the body slowly remodels bone. There is no dramatic reversal here, just removal and time. Over the next 8 months, her kidney function partially recovered, not fully, but enough. Enough to steady her. Enough to walk without her back locking. Some of the skeletal changes, though, were permanent. The stone in her spine does not fully soften back to bone. She lives with that now. And the lesson is calm and simple. Toothpaste is medicine, not candy. Spit. Never swallow. Keep it far away from small children whose small bodies handle much smaller amounts. Tell someone who brushes for 2. Spit. Never swallow. And if you ever see unexplained bone pain meet failing kidneys in yourself or someone you love, ask the quiet question that saved RM, what has been building up a little at a time for years. And that is the story of how a daily whitening habit slowly turned bone to stone and pushed a woman's kidneys toward failure. This has been a medical case study.